So in part C, we want to calculate the tax revenue as a function of the proportional tax for any gross wage, and we'll see that then increasing the proportional tax has two opposing effects. How can we explain that? Okay, so first things first, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna write the tax revenue as a function of a general gross wage, not the gross wage when it's equal to 10, but a general one. So let's do it over here. It's gonna be pretty math based. So we will have the tax revenue equals to the proportional tax times the wage, the proportional tax times the wage times the labor supply, and we already have the labor supply over here, which is gonna be minus 100 plus 200 times the net wage, and the net wage is the gross wage times 1 minus the tax. So we'll have gross wage times 1 minus the tax. 1 minus the tax. Okay, we close those brackets. Now let's differentiate the tax revenue with respect to the proportional tax to see how the proportional tax affects the tax revenue. So what do we have here? We have here a multiplication. We have two terms that contain the proportional tax. We have the first term over here and we have the second term over here. So what are we going to do is to use the product rule. Now, how do we do that? We take the derivative of the first term, so t times the gross wage derivative with respect to tax, and we multiply with the second term. We keep that constant, and let's write it in a normal way, in the sense first the positive and then the negative. So 200 times w gross times 1 minus the tax minus 100, close that brackets. And now we do for the second term, where we're going to take tax times the gross wage. We keep that as it is, and then we'll differentiate the second term with respect to the tax. So we will have 200 multiplied with the gross wage multiplied with 1 minus the tax minus 100 derivative with respect to tax. Okay, let's do the math now. So we're working on the derivative of the tax revenue with respect to the proportional tax. Over here, the derivative with respect to t will keep just the constant, which is wg, and we multiply with this term. So we'll multiply with 200 multiplied with the gross wage after tax minus 100. Now we go to the second term, and what do we have here? We will have tax times the gross wage multiplied with, and what are we left in the second term? Well, let's see, if we differentiate this term with respect to the tax, so the constant goes away, the derivative of minus 100 is going to be 0, but from here when we differentiate with respect to the tax, we will keep the constants, which are 200 times wg. So we will have here 200 times wg, and then 1 minus the tax derivative with respect to tax is going to be just minus 1, and we close this bracket. Okay, we got that. Let's write it one more time in a more simple way, in a more concise way. We will have still w gross multiplied with 200 minus wg 1 minus t minus 100, and let's see what we have over here. If we open the brackets, t times wg multiplied with wg, so we will have 200 times minus 1, that's minus 200, multiplied with the tax multiplied with wg to the power of 2. Now what we calculated over here is already the effect of a change in the tax over the tax revenue. That is the change in the tax revenue due to the change in the proportional tax. What do we notice? Over here, when we have a change in the tax, in the proportional tax, this is multiplied, by the way, it looks like a minus, but it's multiplied. What we have over here is a positive effect, because the coefficient next to the tax term is 200 times wg. That is a positive term, because the gross wage is going to be a positive number. So the effect from here, and then we also multiply with wg over here, the effect over here is a positive effect. But on the other side, when the tax goes up in the second term, right, when we have a change in the proportional tax, we also have a negative effect, because we can see that the coefficient next to it is minus 200 times wg squared. So this is a negative effect. Now, what is the intuition here? Well, the idea is this, and although they are like two effects, they do not happen one after the other. They happen at the same time. This is the highlight. A positive effect happens because a higher proportional tax, right, means more tax revenue collected for the hours that the guy works. But a negative effect is because of the higher proportional tax, there's a lower incentive to work. So a higher proportional tax, lower incentive to work, meaning that the labor supply goes down, meaning that the tax revenue would decrease as well. Now, what matters here the most is to understand that this happened at the same time. This is not one positive effect and then a second negative effect. They happen at the same time in the sense that one of these effects is going to be dominant, but that depends on how large the tax is going to increase. So if the proportional tax increases a lot, well, that would give a big incentive to work less, because what's the point for working if you get very few money from it? Well, not a big reason. So meaning this effect is going to be dominant, meaning that the negative effect will probably higher than the positive effect, meaning that the final effect of an increase in the tax on the tax revenue is going to be negative. We're going to collect less taxes because people work less. But if the proportional tax increases just a bit, so that people are not very reactive to it, people do not really change their working behavior, then most likely the positive effect is going to dominate, because people will still work pretty much the same amount of hours, but we will be able to collect some extra euros for every hour worked, so the tax revenue would go up. So this is the highlight. Both effects happen at the same time. One of them is dominant depending on how much the tax is changed. Hope this all makes sense, and we are done.